You've probably heard the term sustainable construction thrown around a lot, but what does it actually look like when the rubber hits the road? Or, when the steel hits the concrete? Forget the high-level theory for a minute. Today, we're going on-site. We're going to dive deep into a real-world project to see how all those big ideas about sustainability actually hold up against mud, budgets, and the general chaos of a construction site. We're breaking this whole thing down from A to Z so you can see exactly what works.
So, take a look. This is where our story is set, a remote plantation in Ladang Cha, Malaysia. Now, this isn't some glossy, high-tech skyscraper in a major city. This is boots-on-the-ground construction, built for a very specific community. And honestly, that's what makes it so perfect. The real-world challenges, like the remote location and the practical budget, make it the ultimate classroom for seeing how sustainability really performs under pressure.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll get on the same page about what sustainable construction even means. Then, we'll get to know the project itself before we jump into that classic fight, ideal theory versus messy reality. After that, we'll look at the seriously smart solutions they came up with on the ground, and we'll wrap it all up with the big lessons we can all learn from this.
Okay, first things first. Before we can really get into the nitty-gritty of this project, we all need to be speaking the same language. See, sustainable construction isn't just one thing. It's actually a concept that stands on three totally distinct but equally important pillars.
The first pillar, and the one you've probably heard the most about, is the environmental one. This is all about the building's impact on the planet. Keeping that footprint as small as possible. It means being smart with resources, slashing waste, and thinking about the building's entire life, from the very first drawing all the way to its last day.
Next up is the economic pillar, and this is where a lot of folks get it twisted. Being sustainable isn't about just throwing cash at fancy green technology. It's about being smart with money for the long haul. It means choosing materials that are built to last, which might cost a little more today, but will save you a fortune in repairs down the line. It's all about the total cost, not just the upfront price tag.
And finally, we have the social pillar. This is the human side of the whole equation. A building can be super green and affordable, but if it was built by workers in unsafe conditions or it's an unhealthy place to live, well, it's failed, hasn't it? This pillar is all about keeping people safe and healthy and creating spaces that actually make their lives better.
Okay, so now that we've got those three pillars, environmental, economic, and social, locked in, let's head back to our case study. We're shifting from the what to the how and focusing on these new workers' quarters being built at Ladang Cha.
So who's behind all this? The project was commissioned by SD Guthrie. They're a big deal in sustainable agriculture, and their commitment to both the planet and their workers is really the driving force behind this whole thing. They're the ones setting the vision.
Now, the mission sounds pretty straightforward on paper, right? Build 18 new homes for workers. But here's the kicker. They had to do it in a really remote place, far away from easy supply routes, all while sticking to modern, sustainable principles. So this was never just about putting up walls, it was a real test of their commitment.
And just to give you some context on the timeline, this is a year-long project. And get this, it's not something that happened years ago. This is an active construction site right now. So the challenges and the lessons we're about to talk about, they're happening as we speak, which makes this all incredibly relevant.
And this, my friends, brings us to the heart of the story. This is where the ideal vision smacks right into reality. What happens when those perfect ideas from a textbook have to deal with mud, tight budgets, and all the logistical nightmares of a real construction site?
Let's start with the big one, money. In a perfect world, you'd use something called life cycle costing. You spend a bit more now to save a ton later. But in the real world, the pressure to hit that initial budget is just massive. So the focus naturally shifts to keeping upfront costs as low as possible. And right away, you've got a huge gap between the ideal and the real.
And you see the exact same thing with materials. The textbook says use local, recycled, low-carbon stuff. But the reality of being on a remote site, well, you're stuck with what you can actually get delivered, what you can afford, and this is a big one, what the local contractors actually know how to work with. You can't just pick some fancy new eco-material and expect it to show up.
So, given that clash between the dream and the reality, how did this project actually make it work? How did they pull off sustainability on the ground? Well, it wasn't about chasing some impossible, perfect ideal. It was all about making a series of smart, practical choices that had a real, tangible impact.
I love this slide because it just captures that journey perfectly. On the left, you've got the clean, neat blueprint, the vision.
And on the right, you see that vision becoming a messy, real, physical thing. It's in that gap between the two where all the critical, on-the-ground decisions happen.
Okay, check this out. This is a brilliant example of a smart, practical choice. Instead of building the concrete molds out of plywood that you use once and then throw away, they used reusable metal forms. It's not some super high-tech gadget, it's just a simple, genius change in process that gets rid of a massive amount of waste across all 18 houses.
And that practical mindset was everywhere. They went with aluminum roof trusses. That's a double win. They're termite-proof, which is an economic win, and they're recyclable, which is an environmental win. They used affordable sand bricks that were perfect for this type of housing. And, get this, they ordered concrete in smaller batches, just when they needed it. So simple, but it stops a half-used truckload of concrete from hardening into a giant piece of useless waste.
And they absolutely did not forget the people. The social pillar was key. The old cramped barracks are gone, replaced by roomy 3-bedroom homes that give families dignity and space. They built thick party walls for better fire safety, they added ventilation for natural cooling, and a rainwater harvesting system to cut down on treated water use. Every single one of these things is a direct investment in the quality of life for the people who will call these places home.
So we've looked at the theory, we've seen the reality, and we've checked out the practical solutions. So what are the big lessons here? What can we really take away from this project in Ladang Cha?
If you remember one thing from all this, let it be this. Real-world sustainability isn't always about flashy solar panels and expensive tech. As this project proves, most of the time, it's the result of a whole bunch of small, smart, practical decisions that are perfectly tailored to the situation you're in.
So, what's the final verdict? What did this project prove? Well, first, that you absolutely can balance cost and sustainability. They are not enemies. Second, that challenges, like a remote location, can actually spark innovation. Third, that sometimes the biggest wins come from simple changes in how you do things, not from complicated tech. And finally, and maybe most importantly, it proves that a building is only truly sustainable if it sustains the people inside it.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really big question to chew on. The team here proved that real, meaningful sustainability is totally possible, even with a tight budget and the challenges of a remote site. So if they can do it there, what's really stopping these same smart, practical ideas from becoming the standard on every single construction site everywhere?